Okay, today's topic is themes in biology. The last assignment we had last week was about the characteristics of life. Now I want to go over a few themes that you find as we study biology. The first one is about the diversity, but also the unity of life. They might seem kind of contradictory, being diverse, but also unified, but it makes sense. So the diversity or the variety of life is amazing. There are single-celled organisms that live in the Antarctic ice that never thaws. It's just like there's actual organisms that are alive that live in ice. Excuse me. There are also whales that have 1,000 trillion cells that can migrate from Alaska to Mexico every year. And just in case you were unfamiliar with how far that is, that's why I put up a map of North America. So from Alaska, which is here, all the way down the western coast of Canada, all the way down the western coast of the United States to Mexico, which is here. One special organism, which is my fave, are the tardigrades. They're also called water bears. This is what they look like with a scanning electron microscope, which is this really big microscope that magnifies like tens of thousands of times. It's one of our best microscopes or microscope. It's our best microscope technology that allows us to see like almost 3D images. These animals can survive, I should say, almost everything. They can survive temperatures between negative 272 all the way up to 150 degrees Celsius. So you could put it in boiling water. It'd be like, meh. It can withstand 6 times the pressure at the bottom of the ocean. I mean, we can't even build submarines that can go down to the bottom of the ocean in some parts. And this guy can survive 6 times the pressure. It can survive the ionizing radiation that would kill a human being. Don't forget, you're looking at it through one of the most powerful microscopes that we have. So it's a super, super tiny organism. It can survive without food or water for more than 30 years. It can dry out to the point where it has less than 3% water. I don't know what it would take to kill a human. I think we're about 70% water, 75% water, but I'm pretty sure if we lost around 3% of our water, we'd probably be in trouble. It can also survive the vacuum of freaking outer space. So it doesn't need like air at all. Like space is literally a vacuum. So that is a pretty amazing little creature there. And that's why it's one of my favorites. All right, so that's the diverse part. Now we're going to look at the unity. Life is characterized by unity. These are features that all living things have in common. That was the whole point of last week's lesson, is that in order to be classified as a living thing, you needed to conform to all of those characteristics that I talked about. For example, genetic code. All living things have some kind of genetic code, whether it's DNA or RNA. These are rules that control how cells use hereditary information in DNA. This is something that we call the tree of life. It's a model of relationships by ancestry among organisms. So you can see there's 2 ways to classify organisms, which I'll talk about in a minute, I think. You can use the 3-domain system, which is here, or the 6-kingdom method. And this is the most common method used when you talk about life and how to categorize life. So you see we have the earliest cells. These were the first life forms on Earth. They most likely formed in aquatic or water environments, and this occurred about 3.5 billion years ago. So if you break it down, life can be classified into 3 domains. That is domain bacteria, domain archaea, and domain eukarya. And I can talk more about why there's a difference later on, but for right now, there's 3 domains. And then the way that the domains fit into the 6-kingdom system is that domain bacteria is what we call modern day bacteria. Archaea represents our archaebacteria, which are like bacteria that live in extreme environments. And eukarya is everything else. So we have, I'm going to start with the plants, fungi, and animals first. That seems pretty straightforward. What are protists, you might add? Protists are belong in the domain eukarya, but they are not plants, they're not fungus, and they're not animals. That's basically all the leftovers. So that's how we can classify living organisms. All living things share certain genes, but no two types have the same full set of genes except for identical twins, of course. So biologists build the tree of life by placing organisms that have more similar sets of genes on closer branches. So the closer that you are on this tree, the more closely related you are. More distantly related organisms are on branches that are further apart. So like I said, there's the 3 domains. These are the 3 main branches. So just to kind of reiterate what I just said, or to repeat what I just said, if you've got organisms that are close together, they're on branches that are close together, that means that they have a recent common ancestor. They're closely related relatively. But if you have like these guys way over here, look at animals, which we fall under, look at how far away our branch is. You have to go like down here, down here. And as you go down the tree, you're going back in time. You're going into history. So the closer you are, the more related you are, and the further apart you are, the less related you are. So bacteria and archaea have less complex cells than eukarya. That's why they're separate. And there's, like I said, the second system of classifying organisms is in kingdoms, which I talked about: bacteria, archaea, protists, plant, fungi, and animals. Another key theme in biology, which relates to unity, is interdependence. Now, if you want to break down vocab, which we can do in biology because a lot of it is based on Latin and a little bit on Greek, but more Latin. You have inter and dependence. I'm assuming we already know what dependence means, but inter means, oh, sorry, my iPad just disconnected. Okay. So we know what we know what dependence means. Inter means between two. So between 2 organisms, dependence between 2 organisms. Basically it just means that we all depend on each other. There's an old idiom that says no man is an island. Like you're always affected by other organisms. So the specific branch of biology that deals with the interdependence of organisms is called ecology. Again, with vocab, logi means knowledge of, and eco is environment. That's why we talk about wanting things to be eco-friendly. We want things that are friendly towards the environment. So ecology looks extensively at the interactions between organisms and their environment. It's a huge field of biology that can be broken down into further specializations. There's really no scientist that just says, I'm an ecologist that studies all of ecology. You always specialize in something. So ecologists study single species as well as ecosystems. Now, an ecosystem is something like a desert, rainforest, temperate forest, grasslands, things like that. But you would probably look at it in a very specific area, like on a specific continent. So you're going to look at not only how the organism interacts with other organisms that live in that area, but also how they deal with the physical environment, like the temperature, the amount of rain, habitat, things like that. Another key theme of biology is evolution. Individuals change during their lifetime, but their basic genetic characteristics don't change. So for example, you can go to the gym and get ripped. That doesn't mean that you're going to have children that come out being all muscular and like, bleh. So you can change during your life, but it doesn't change your DNA. What you pass on to your offspring is in your DNA, not in your everyday life. Populations of living things, however, do change over time through evolution. Evolution is a process in which inherited characteristics within a population changes over generations. Evolution helps us understand the branches of the tree of life. It helps us understand how these organisms are related, what kind of changes occurred that led to these branches splitting off in different directions.
Did you know that life?
Now, when we talk about evolution, evolution is just describing a process of change over generations. Natural selection is what allows us to explain how evolution happens. So it's one thing to say that populations change, it's another thing to explain how that change occurs, and that's natural selection. What natural selection is, that organisms that have favorable traits, a favorable trait is something that allows you or your population to survive the environment better and to reproduce successfully than others that don't have that trait. So, for example, if I have these two rabbits, and let's say we live in an Arctic environment, let's say it's either the North Pole or the South Pole, which rabbit do you think is going to survive and be able to survive to reproduce? Hopefully, you're like, duh, the white rabbit, because the brown rabbit's going to be very easy to spot against the white background of the snow. So what happens is, if you start off with a certain population where you have random rabbits that are either brown or white, during the wintertime, those brown rabbits are going to be more easily spotted by predators, so their population number will be reduced and they will not pass on the brown fur gene to the next generation, which means the next generation will have a larger population of white rabbits. And that keeps repeating over and over and over again until possibly there are no brown rabbits at all anymore. And then that's what we call evolution, a whole population changing over time.